everyone. Welcome back to Become Family. We are so glad, so glad that Mary Bruno has agreed to come and chat with us tonight. Oh my gosh, she has so many things to share with us. So I'm actually just going to kick it over to her to introduce herself, let us know. But I guess I will first actually share where we found her. We are social media friends. We're one of those just buddies from social media. And she speaks very openly about natural family planning is probably where we first clicked and joined forces in sharing stuff. Because she and her buddy Emily Frazee have their fan base, which is a nonprofit, right?
Yep.
They're so legit and so cool. So they share so many things about natural family planning, but she's a wealth of knowledge in lots of other areas. So Mary, can you share a little bit about who you are and why you're so great?
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you for that introduction. NFP, I would say, is what kind of got me started on social media because I was diagnosed so late with endometriosis, which also has something to do with my infertility. And so I started talking about that because it was just shocking to me that growing up in the Catholic Church with such a devout Catholic family that I didn't like it took me so long to get diagnosed, which is something that could have happened much sooner had I been aware of these NFP methods and that there was more than just one. So many of us are like, this is the one you use. And I just didn't know. And so it's what started out as educating women and couples about restorative reproductive medicine and the Creighton model kind of turned into, okay, there's a lot of these different methods for women in all different stages of life because there's no one best method fit. So it's really important to educate people on their options and how to use a method effectively because that education really isn't there in the church, even though the church has such a hugely influential in natural family planning, but it's also applicable for people no matter what faith you are. Mm-hmm. So there's just so much to know. And Emily and I kind of call it bringing NFP into the 21st century.
Yes.
And so our website is fabmbase.org. I'm thrilled to share, by the time this episode comes out, we will have added a new feature to our website that I'm really excited about. So go check it out. It's called a method comparison.
Oh, yes.
And what we did is we interviewed 1 to 2 instructors from all the popular methods. And we came up with like maybe 10 or 11 different life situations or reproductive categories. So the user typically a user would come in, dealing with something specific and want to know, well, how does each method handle my situation? Mm-hmm. So what you can do is you can click on postpartum or perimenopause or miscarriage or painful cramps. And there's a drop down menu and it will show you how each method deals with that unique situation according to the instructor professionals. So it's gotten a lot of good feedback about it so far. So very excited for that to come out. So, wow. And then eventually, infertility, it seemed like that was something that was, could really touch on people's hearts in the unique way that I approach it because I suffered for so long, especially as a Catholic woman, with infertility. And so just sharing vulnerably from the heart and then the things that I learned over the years, which is how fruitful we are. Like, what does fruitfulness really come from? Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of us Catholics get it wrong. And that's made infertility that much harder for me. And I just think y'all have done such a beautiful job as a couple with several children. That's why one of the many reasons I love y'all so much. I was just talking today to Father Paul West, who's the spiritual father for Springs in the Desert, a Catholic infertility organization or nonprofit. I don't know which one.
Apostolate. So I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how there seems to be this gap between like the infertile and or couples who struggle to get pregnant and couples who have children, like an unintentional gap that
Mm-hmm.
that I think the infertile really feel. But I think you and Renzo have done such a good job at closing that gap.
Oh,
And the way
thank you.
that y'all approach topics as a couple with children and in all your marriage stuff. So I'm just so grateful to y'all for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been, I think there's been a lot of buzzwords in the Catholic faith that we in the real lived experience have to almost like reframe in our mind because we hear the word fruitful and then our marriages we're called to be fruitful. We're called to be fruitful and multiply. I mean, that's big biblical. But then we face these real world situations and we're like, okay, what does fruitfulness really mean? And one of the tools that has helped us to kind of reframe fruitfulness was Dr. Bob Schutz with his Be Healed,
Yes, I'm
and like
familiar
root
with
and
the
fruit
book.
analogy of like woundedness and like good fruit, bad fruit, and like all those things. And
Yeah,
we're just like, wow, our marriage is supposed to be the root of a lot of good fruit, right? And like,
yeah, no.
and for many couples that will be children. One of those evidences will be children, but that is absolutely not the limit of the fruitfulness and our yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm grateful that that you share so much about the fruitfulness of your family. Um, can you maybe share a little bit about that journey of reframing of fruitfulness once you encountered like, yeah, how did you find out that infertility was a part of your story, your family's story, and maybe a little bit about how you and your husband had to kind of wrestle with that
Mhm.
and what your fruitfulness looks like today.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite topics to talk about.
I love
So
my people, my
as
my
you probably
family.
know. So I just if the listener can kind of take a moment to consider, like, if you were raised, and this is not necessarily intentional, not necessarily overt, but just kind of like messages received in my mind and heart are that Catholics, as a devout Catholic woman, like, you get married, if you have a job, you quit your job, you get pregnant, you stay at home, raise the child, and then you just keep having more children. And it was just this one, like, nobody sat down and told me that, but
Mhm.
that's just what I gathered. That those were the messages. And that can be a beautiful vocation and plan for one's life. It's just that we're all unique, and our life situations, our gifts are all so different that our lives tend to look differently. And so, like I'm saying, like, if you consider, like, this is what your life is supposed to look like, and then through no fault of your own, that children part just doesn't happen, then you can easily start to feel pretty broken,
Mhm.
pretty small, pretty insignificant, unimportant, forgotten by God, like, just you name it.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people don't get there because most people are able to have children. So you don't really realize necessarily that that is just what you've kind of expected to happen. And so obviously I didn't like even realize this was the way that I just was like, this is just what happens. So when it didn't happen, I felt pretty hard. And but it was what I call like one of the hardest days of my life. I got a false positive pregnancy test. And it was like 2 years into it. It was the hardest part of infertility, where I finally got angry at God, and I was just like, enough. Like, I've done all the things right. We save
Yeah.
sex for marriage. We receive all the sacraments. We do all the things. What did I do wrong? Why are you punishing me? I think that's a natural way to look at it. And so that's where God was really testing my faith. And that's what any kind of suffering is God allowing us to fall to our knees and fall on our face, and hoping that we will reach out to him, and we'll allow him to pick us up. And so I really questioned God's existence that
Mm.
day. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
being honest. I got angry. I looked at the cross on the wall and was like, how could you do this to me? And I really heard him ask me in my heart, do you love me? And I was just like, well, obviously that's what everybody says. But
Mhm.
here, when I'm not getting what I want, am I going to choose to love him? And that was like a huge decision where I fell on my face, but it was a choice I made that didn't feel so good, like sitting in that discomfort, but still choosing him. And that's when everything changed for me.
Mm.
And I got
Wow.
really curious. It was 3 months after that we started the adoption process. And as you know, Bella's been just the biggest blessing in our life. And I really wasn't open to adoption before that. But I was just like, I
Mm.
need to trust God here. So that was the first thing. And then we, infertility, like it's such a crushing on our hearts. There's so much that it takes from us that I think we unintentionally, it's so easy to make it into an idol. And that
Mm.
is the primary focus. And so when I kind of started to look outside of myself rather than like what I want, but what does God want? I started to even remember or discover all of these gifts that God had given me, these desires on my heart that I forgot were there or that I didn't know were there
Mm.
because I was so focused on having a child. And so that was really when like we started the adoption process. I started writing, started sharing my story. And who knew, like, I just never thought of myself as someone who likes to write. But to this day, I mean, that was 10 years ago. It's been so cathartic and so freeing and so fruitful for me to be able to write, really
Mm.
healing. And so the first, I've published 3 books now. Only one of them was intentional. 2 of them were kind of accidents because I just
Wow.
was writing and the Holy Spirit just kind of moved me and then like it became a
Yeah.
book. But it was just so healing to get it down and so yeah, those are just a couple of ways, but just I just love celebrating the gifts and desires of other people, making people laugh. I rapped for a little while. I know that sounds so silly, but that was really healing for me too, to be able to express my emotions. And that was just the kind of music that I loved. And I could write these lyrics that were really,
They're
powerful, at
great.
least for me.
Sure.
And so, yeah, but I just think like a smile is fruitful. Like there are so many things in a day that we do that are fruitful, that where we are embracing our spiritual parenthood. But so many of us think, oh, spiritual parenthood is just dumb. Like it's this consolation prize, but it's so needed
Hmm.
and it's just not celebrated enough. So I want to celebrate that in myself, in others. And because that's what being a parent is all about. Like we don't need to have a child for that to be activated. We're all living it
Yeah.
every day. And I think if we just saw, if that was elevated a little more, I think we would all feel a lot more fulfilled, you know?
I love you sharing how this deeply honest and vulnerable prayer is what produced so much more fruit in your life. Like to really
Amen.
to see things as they really were instead of what you were grasping at and desiring, which and you said it, which were all good things, right? You were reaching for and searching for really good things and no one would fault you or say like, where did you come up with that? Or didn't you see that that wasn't the right thing? Like those are all really good things, but then that honest of like, Lord, what why? And his answer coming to you of like, you're going to be real with me and I'm going to be real with you. And he's like, I have things for you. I have a plan for you. And I've heard you speak a lot of spiritual maternity and spiritual parenthood. Can you maybe share? Because I feel like that might be a term that some people haven't heard of, or if they do, they kind of picture that as like, well, that's what priests and religious are. They are our spiritual parents, or it might be like a godparent, or like you have one special
Hmm.
person that you click with. But like I feel like you've offered a much broader perspective of spiritual parenthood. Can you maybe elaborate on that
Yeah.
a little bit?
So I think the best way to put it is that like it's one thing to have a child. So many people have children. Like whether they are Catholic or atheist or Baptist or whatever religion, like religion or not, good parent or not, people are having children. That's something that so many people do. So it's like that is a good and beautiful thing, but that's only half the job, right? Like
Yeah.
the
The
actual
biology of
parenthood,
it. Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
biology, the
Mm-hmm.
actual crucial part is in how we love.
Mm.
And that's the fruitful part is how we form those people.
Mm.
And we are forming and contributing to that development, not just to little humans, but to people all around us all the time. that's just reality. And the world would not move without it. So yes, while we can recognize that priests and those nuns and religious life, like that's the most classically recognized, God has called us all to be that to whomever he puts into our paths. So, to think about it, what does it mean to be a mother? It means to nurture, to discipline, to teach, to correct, to serve. And like it's in a unique way. And just like men have their unique ways of fatherhood, and there's some crossover there, but it's still in a unique way.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
as women do that in a unique way. But is it reserved just for children that we have? No, we're called to nurture, to teach, to discipline, to do so many different things, to our friends, even to our own parents, right? We're caring for them as they get older, or if there's something else that happens, to strangers, like I said, a smile to the person in the grocery store, like anything. Our motherhood is needed. Our fatherhood, or a man's fatherhood, is needed to so much more. It's just for whatever reason, it's not acknowledged or elevated. It's like this kind of like thing over here on the side, but that's how I look at it. So hoping that we can just recognize that more.
Yeah. And so many missed opportunities if we are like belittling that part of ourselves, that invitation
Exactly.
that we have. Like, wow, how transformative could that be if I see this, like these opportunities or these experiences as opportunities,
Exactly.
to offer myself to fruitfulness. Hey, welcome back. We had a kiddo wake up.
Yep.
We called it.
Yeah.
As soon as little tap 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 at the door, and I was like, somebody's awake.
Somebody's awake.
She may not be asleep either. So
Okay. Well,
Oh,
he's the one closer to the door. So there he goes.
fruitfulness
Okay.
in action. I love
Fruitfulness
it.
in action, right? Exactly. Fatherhood.
Fatherhood.
Daddy.
That's right.
Yes. So sorry, sidetracked. I do also want to return to you are very passionate, and I feel like this is one area where you offer your spiritual maternity to others is in helping to teach and educate about natural family planning. And I believe, if I remember correctly, you are trained in the Creighton method to teach the Creighton method.
Yes.
Can you maybe share a little bit more about that method in particular? Because it's also blessed our family in starting our family, and while like infertility was a part of our early marriage, and the Creighton and NAPRO technology and all those wonderful things. But would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So there's several, 5 or 6 popular methods I think that we usually talk about. And they're all unique and wonderful in their own ways. So again, there's no one best fit, best method. There's just a best fit for the individual woman at a given time or couple. So what is unique about Creighton is that it's got this in-depth medical component, like a whole branch of medicine, basically called NAPRO technology. So what happened was after birth control was developed, Pope Paul VI came out with Humanae Vitae, and we're all I think pretty familiar with that. And in Humanae Vitae, there was a call to men of science, like so doctors, scientists, to find a better way for women who were, felt called to space children. So Dr. Thomas Hilders was in college at the time, or a new med student or a doctor. I don't know at which point in his career he was in, but this really spoke to him. And he took that challenge very seriously. And so he did a lot of research. His wife was a nurse, so they did that together. And in their research, so they developed, they at first worked with the Billings method. And then they split off and did Creighton because they wanted to go, I think, deeper into the medical component of that. And so in their research, they learned that, okay, it was actually kind of accident. In studying women with cycles that look a certain way, well, they typically have this going on, like this medical condition. And then the cycles that look this way, like this is typically going on. And so that motivated him to develop that medical component of NAPRO technology, natural procreative technology. So if, the reason I choose to teach Creighton is because even though I never got pregnant, My symptoms improved at times, but they never, my charts never really recovered from surgeries. I've had 12 surgeries. So I am not like your NAPRO success story. I know a lot of people say NAPRO is like this magic, whatever. And that's not my intention ever to express it that way. That's really not what it was for me, but it did help me to understand the way my body works. And it did give me the most opportunity than any other medicine could. And so it's able to manage hormones and just give me options. And I had I known, but I found it really late too. So I got diagnosed with endometriosis, took about 12 years. So had I been aware of Creighton in high school, I mean, I just wonder, had I been, would I be infertile today? Would I have children had I gotten the treatment right away before the disease was able to do so much damage in my body? And so, again, that's what really inspired me to start the ministry and the work that I do and ultimately become a Creighton practitioner. And I still see clients. And to help other women not experience what I had to experience. But it's a very, it's a very vulnerable, rewarding, but also difficult job. And I really actually love to help. Like, Creighton's not always the best fit. And so I'm very honest with women. I'm like, look, I think, like, I want you to know that, like, I'm with you. I'm happy to teach you, but this method might be better. I'm sending them their options. Or I'm saying, like, a lot of women in your situation actually find that this method is a better fit. And so I'll refer them. Some of them will use both methods at the same time. So I've had several clients using Creighton and Marquette at the same time. So they want to avoid pregnancy with Marquette, but they use Creighton for like those just more deep health benefits that you can get with that. And then, that can change. So I just, when you understand how it works, you can really serve each individual woman. And that's what NFP is about. It's serving the individual human person, because we're all so unique and we all, it's not one size fits all. So that's why I teach Creighton. But yeah, again, all the methods have their own unique wonders.
Yeah. I have such deep respect and admiration for you, for your own life experience. Again, this is where this spiritual maternity is elevated in. You experience, your family experiences infertility, and now I don't think you've shared yet, but that it's now permanent infertility, right? You've had a hysterectomy.
Correct.
And so this isn't a, like, I hope one day Creighton and NAPRA will figure it out, right? But for you to still gift your passion for women understanding their bodies and getting to know, like, what's going on, and maybe, like, I didn't have that benefit early on, but I hopefully I can share that with somebody a little bit sooner. I just have such a deep respect for you in taking your cross and transforming it into something, again, that is so fruitful for other couples, other women, other families. So yeah, I just
Thank you so much.
Shout that out, because I don't know if you hear it enough, but
oh, that's actually the first time. I've never thought of it that way. So thank you. But it's that purpose. Like, you want to make something useful rather than it just, feeling wasted. So it helps.
Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to ask?
I'm still trying to pick up.
I'm sorry, you missed
No, it's fine. It's fine. I will eventually. I just didn't want to ask something that was already answered, so I'm kind of listening.
Gotcha.
I'm observing.
Okay,
you're good.
You mentioned Dr. Hilgers. We were at Seek last winter, and the Pope Paul Institute was there, and Dr. Hilgers wasn't, but his daughter and his wife were there.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, for anyone that knows Seek, like, there are so many quote unquote influencers that are there. Like, Father Mike Schmitz is just like wandering around, and like all, like all these people. And I was like, Renzo, we have to go meet the Hilgers. Like, they're the influencers I want to meet.
Oh, that's so cool.
But you just think about, like, I did, absolutely.
Oh,
I got a picture with them. Awesome. That was like the one person.
That was me. He was my doctor for a little while. So I was pretty
very intimate with him.
It was yes, but it's like a starstruck moment. Like, wow, this is really like full circle. Like, how cool. And then his son is the one who did my hysterectomy in Houston. Wow. So that's pretty cool.
Yes. So just to, like, I don't know, just for someone to marry science and faith, right? To have this
Yes.
directive from the church on moral teaching of science, but also being like, women need something though. There's a very real need. And science is trying to address it, but inadequately here.
Oh, yeah.
So for him to like just answer that call is so critical. Can you maybe
Yeah.
share a little bit more about where you see science and morality complementing one another and maybe conflicting one another, especially in terms of natural, like in terms of family planning and infertility?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understand the
Sure.
question.
Yeah. Um, so I think like what we're learning through charting our cycles and things like that, we are able to see that like birth control isn't necessary for avoiding or achieving pregnancy. Is there any other
Right.
place where you're seeing that like science and morality can help a woman, or maybe where science and morality are clashing and they're not helping women?
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe would IVF be a good example?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's a really good example because, gosh, it's like this weird taboo topic because so many people are uncomfortable in addressing it. And I totally understand
Mm.
that, especially in the church, but like we got to, somebody's
Yeah.
got to, somebody's got to do
Yeah.
it. And I feel like God's given me a unique position and this unique desire. Like this has really been on my heart in the last year, towards the end of last year and this year, to really talk about it because I am infertile and I've never been
Yeah.
pregnant. And it's one thing to hear, and I never will be pregnant. It's one thing to hear. We need to hear everybody, I mean, people talking about it, but it's also, it's special to hear someone who is living infertility to still say, no, this is not life-giving. I know it seems
Yeah.
life-giving, but it's not the merciful option.
And I don't think that there's a lot of people that know that, like that there
No,
is a
no,
conflict. Yeah.
exactly. It's not just that it's hard. People don't understand it. So like, I think the main reasons people think about it is that, I guess I want to say Catholics, want to address the pro-life issue sometimes in the sense that they know that it is somehow abortifacient or like it destroys embryos, freezes them. Not even everybody knows that. It's shocked me to hear recently of someone not Catholic, but they're like didn't know that was a thing. But there's also a lot of other stuff going on in with IVF that is not something that is going to be fruitful. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, right? Because the purpose of IVF is to create a child, which sounds fruitful. And in a way, like, and any child created by IVF has the same dignity and worth as every other human being created. So this is not like an indictment against any child who's been created through IVF. I think it's important to always say that, I think. Um, but some other things going on there is that it deprives the child. And this is how the catechism speaks about it, which I think is so beautiful. If you actually read directly from the catechism, how it speaks about IVF, and it just hits you differently. It's really not divisive. It shows that child has dignity and the child deserves to be the result of the loving embrace and the self-donation of intercourse from husband and wife. It's about the child. It's not about the couple. And many times by the time a couple gets to IVF, it's really about the couple
Hmm.
because there are other options. And that's the other part. So not just that, and I'll get to other options in a second, but so the destruction of embryos, the child deserves to be created through an act of intercourse. There's also, I think that it's sold as a cure for infertility, and it's really not. It deprives the couple of that discomfort, of that wrestling that God is allowing for some purpose.
Mm.
So, whereas there can be other alternatives that cause suffering, but it's not a productive suffering. I mean, it is a productive suffering. I'm sorry. IVF is not a productive suffering. And so, and then finally, of course, it's not addressing the underlying health issue. It bypasses, I mean, and this can be regardless of faith. This is why I love to talk about this part, because we don't have to talk about morality. It's just not healing the woman, and the woman deserves to be healed. period. And so I think that if we do a better job as a Catholic culture, like you'll hear from many infertile women. I'm speaking to seminaries next week, and I put out a poll about what do you want the priest to know. I got almost 100 responses, which is a lot for my Instagram page. 100, almost 100 responses. And one girl said, I forget her exact words, but she said, I think being Catholic makes infertility like so much harder. Like it was, I forget the exact, but it really struck me, and I agreed with it. So I'm like, we've got to do a better job. Infertile Catholic women feel so isolated. And then, recently IVF comes up in the news, and all of a sudden Catholics want to start talking about it and say, don't do this, which I appreciate the attention brought. It's something, but we cannot wait till it comes up in the news to be the only time we talk about it. That is not helping it's not making anyone not choose IVF. I can promise you that. So I'm really hoping we can do a better job of drawing those women in and not having a conversation just about IVF, just drawing them in and saying, you're welcome here. We love you. Like, what are your gifts? Let's celebrate your parenthood or your spiritual parenthood. How can you be, we want you in this community. And then also just have people should know the alternatives of NAPR technology. It shouldn't be, it can be very uncomfortable when a person comes to a priest and they'll be like, well, have you tried NAPR technology? Because that kind of feels like they're trying to fix, and they really just need to listen and sit with them in that discomfort. But if they already know, if there's just so I've recently created a flyer actually on my website. It's a free download. You can just go download it and hang it in a parish. And it's just got, NAPR technology is 1.5 to 3 times more effective than IVF. And it's got a link, and it's got an up space to put like local doctors to just write it in and just hang it so that people just know it's there. And it's got naprotechnology.com and the stats. And I just that's a little easy thing that I think that we can do to start conversations and just start educating people.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned quickly that like it comes up in the news, IVF, and then suddenly you get a ton of apologetic videos on like why. And I felt, and I liked how you addressed it on your different pages, but because I felt like really quickly, whoever was responding to these videos and through their apologetics forgot that there's a desire for children. There's women that want a specific thing. And I feel like that kind of gets lost in the weeds of, I just want to be right, and let me show you all the reasons you're wrong. Could you also speak to like how as a church we should be empathizing before we start trying to lay out all the rules that the church teaches?
Yes, I love that. And you really, I think, kind of addressed it just now, but it's just remembering that these are people, these are humans that don't want IVF. Okay. And that's something else that I realized. Few women, if any, truly desire to go through the hell that is IVF. The only reason that they're there is because they have lost all hope. All of it. And what is part of the reason they've lost hope? They don't have community. They don't feel seen. They don't feel loved by their family, their friends, or maybe their church. It's just a hard truth. So if we can come and also, when is the part where we're taught about IVF in Catholic school? Never. We have to somebody has to do the job. How can we sit there and be like, oh, IVF is wrong? But like, who is going to tell these people that? I mean, sometimes our parents do, but like, just the reality is most of us don't have people teaching this. We've got to do a better job at church, educating people in the faith, especially on these topics that just like, it's not really appropriate to teach a child, obviously, a religion class, or, high school is another story, but I just don't know that that's the priority, and that's okay. But there has to be some point where we're having these conversations. So I think coming from the place of like, many people don't have any reason to know that this is wrong. And if they do, it's just, oh, the Catholic Church is against this. The Catholic Church hates me. So there's not this humanity there. So I think just taking a step back and remembering that the conversation should have started a long time ago. So if you're talking about it just because it's in the news, just wait till it leaves the news and have the conversation and meet the woman where she's at and sit with her and just her discomfort and just say, hey, this sucks. Like, infertility is so hard. And let's start there. Don't start at don't do IVF, because she's going to be like, well, where were you a week ago when I was suffering?
Yeah.
You
Right. I would
know?
say if you're gonna have a conversation like that with someone, like a parishioner or anybody, I think you have to be willing to invest in their lives and walk with them before you
Exactly.
start having that conversation. Like there's no reason to
100%.
try to prove
Right.
anybody wrong or anything like that.
Right.
And that's with
And I
any
think,
topic, really.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Honestly.
Especially when it comes to matters of like intimacy and such deeply personal things. And you had even said it at the beginning of our chat about you're like, I never heard it from one direct source, but like what I had internalized of what a Catholic married
Yeah.
woman's life would look like. And so many women who are considering IVF, they've internalized that as well. And they're like, well, the Catholic Church is saying I should be married and have a whole bunch of kids, and I
Exactly. Yep.
can't. And now they're telling me I can't do this to try to have children to be what
Such
they've
a good
told me I'm
point.
supposed to be. And it's so
Yeah.
like, yeah, that message is absolutely out there. And I'm sorry that you received that because it's not accurate. It's not true. But I'm not saying that you didn't hear that, right? And that you
Right.
didn't
Right.
experience that because we are, we are fallen, right? And like, I don't want to give us an out, but we as a wider church have misrepresented, again, fruitfulness of marriage and
Yeah.
hyper focused on reproducing and reproduction. And it's like, that's just the biology, right? That's not the fullness of
Exactly.
the whole marital act. That's not the fullness of marriage as a vocation in general. And yeah, I'm even wondering, like thinking about these deeper conversations too of better, like just better marriage prep too, of like what is your marriage really supposed to be a sign of, and what are you working towards together? But would you be willing to share how maybe some of these conversations went between you and your husband as far as like navigating some of these, like it's not happening, or should we consider, I don't know, maybe.
Or maybe like what would you say to couples that are in that boat right now? Like if you could, like what would you say to them if you could just
Like how they could talk, how they could start those conversations as a married couple, like
yeah.
as a.
Are you talking about it specifically within the context of IVF, like considering it, or just in
More
general?
just infertility as a
Yeah.
like I think
They're facing
yeah.
infertility. How can they maybe?
In particular, listeners, like I'm assuming most of them are younger married couples, but like I know that there's times where like yeah, the young couples get married, they assume everything's going to go smoothly, and then it doesn't. And like, what would you say to them as they start to navigate that?
Yeah. I want to say Chris did so much better than I did. I mean, I really, right. Like now I truly feel healed, and like, it's always going to be something that is painful for me, but I'm experiencing that joy and pain can coexist. And I really am experiencing like the resurrection. I truly, so I will say this, when I was in the worst of it, there were any talk that I went to, or like the books were always about the infertile woman who eventually got pregnant. Okay. And that was the glory story. And that just never resonated with me because no one could promise me that. I wanted to hear from the woman who never got pregnant was still okay. So it wasn't really my intention, but that's what God created in me, is that, and I'm more than okay. Like I mean that. Like I truly am living the joy of Christ. So I want everyone to know that it is possible, but it also is not possible without falling on your knees and on your face and just being honest with yourself and God about how you feel. That's the only way that I was able to move forward, was by making a choice, and it didn't feel good. So I want to say that there's absolutely hope no matter where you are. With Chris and I, so Chris, and I want to say, so adoption does not heal infertility. It is not, I don't even like hesitate to call it an alternative to IVF, because it's just something that some people are called to and some people are not. I will say that it did certainly like fill a certain motherhood desire that I had. So it helped in those ways, but the pain of infertility was always there. But Chris was so open and patient with me. Like he was always open to adoption. I was not. But he had experiences with adoption as a child. His parents actually started the process. He knew kids that were adopted. So that's another reason why I like to talk about it, because I had no exposure to it.
Mm.
It took me a lot longer for it to become something that I was willing to, and it still wasn't ready by the time we moved forward. I just trusted God enough by the grace of God. But I will say, like, if one person can give the other person the space to come when God, like, as to be patient, that's what Chris was patient with me. And he just allowed God to work on my heart in the time. And he was like, it was hard for him because he wanted to adopt sooner. You know, he was ready, but he was so patient with me. And that it only takes one out of the two to be like that. But that's what gave me, I think it just helped me so much to eventually move, is because he wasn't pushing me. He was loving me where I was. And then, you know, that openness to God, of course, to take one step at a time. And he just revealed more and more to me the more trust that I gave him. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Absolutely. Because I
Okay.
think a lot of couples, like, the kind of advice they'd want would be like, oh, what can I do to fix this so that this all goes smoothly? It's just
Yeah.
like that's just not how marriage works. So like, and
Amen.
yeah.
Yeah. And to lean into just how you're both different too, to for him to be allowed to be patient too, because sometimes we could be like, what are you seem too calm about this, like this is a big
For
problem.
sure.
You know, like, and I think sometimes when we have those seemingly opposing personality types or ways of handling stress or just like different things, and to try to remember that like God brought the two of you together for a very real reason, and you are different on purpose, and you're
Amen.
aligned
Yeah.
in certain ways on purpose. But
There's
Yeah.
been arguments in the past that we've had because I've said it'll all work out, and you'd be like, how is this gonna
what the
work out?
heck do you know about anything?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
But yeah, so like so beautiful though for him to be steadfast in his trust and in his patience, and also praise God for your pursuit of truth and healing too, because you're also like, but there's something wrong and I want to also address it. And there's something really
Yeah.
good about that too. And I think that it sounds like that has also led to maybe not the healing you thought you were pursuing, but probably a more important kind of
Well, and
healing.
something we didn't, oh, Renzo, you wanted to say something?
No, you go first.
Okay. We didn't even touch on the physical pain that I experienced. With the endometriosis that I had, it wasn't just infertility. It was intense physical pain that eventually became so much that I couldn't care for Bella, our daughter. Like, we had to get help. I was in the emergency room once a month. It was like outside of my cycle. So it was really bad. In addition to that, I had 12 surgeries over the years. And so it's not something you ever ask for, but gosh, the way Chris loved me and served me during those times, I treasure so much, especially early in our marriage. Cause this was like the first, so like he proposed to me like 2 days before my biggest surgery. And so he flew with me like 3 times to Omaha, Nebraska to have these surgeries before we were married, obviously after we were married. But like, it just showed so much about how he was going to choose to love me. He knew that I might not be able to have children, but that didn't change. He loved me for who I am. He loves me for who I am. And just to see him, like when I couldn't walk, like him helping me walk, drawing the bath for me and just sitting with me on the other side of the tub while I just tried to survive. That was like, when one of my spiritual directors at the time was like, that was sexual intimacy. And I loved that so much. There was no actual intercourse, but we were both giving our whole selves to one another. Dreams of fertility crushed me in so much pain, but this pleasure of a deeper intimacy. And that's what too, like we're talking, sexual intimacy is so much more than we recognize it as. And so like, even in that way, that helped us to experience each other in new, deeper ways we wouldn't have if we didn't have these trials and these crosses.
Yeah, and that's perfect. So what I was going to say earlier, and if it's even better now, was that I appreciate so much of your witness because, like with all technology and everything, I think we're in a moment with the church that devout Catholics are kind of, I don't want to say tired. I might sound a little rude, but I feel like they're tired of like just the theological answers, and like they want like real answers of like, how can I actually live this out and actually experience the joy I'm supposed to experience in the spirit, but like I don't by just following the rule. Like they just want, the ethereal, like they
Real
want to know like,
life.
how do I actually live this out? Right. And so
Yeah.
your experience is, I think it's unique in the Catholic spaces, but it's not unique to Catholics. I feel like there's a lot of Catholics who silently are just out there suffering, looking for answers. So like for you to be able to like write the books you've written and be able to have the ministries you have, I think is so, it's such a huge deal that it's happening now. And like, it wouldn't have happened if you weren't given the crosses. So thank you for bearing them and then
Yeah.
getting to this point that you could do that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's a good point.
Yeah. And I'm just blown away by, while it's you here that we're talking to and speaking to, right? And it's your face on the social media, how it is still like a full family experience, and it's a full family mission to then like take our lives and to offer that to the Lord and be like, okay, what do you want to make of this? And I'm blown away by how your family is all participating in this grittiness of life. And so one other thing that because you are just a mastermind, but you also are speaking a lot about the gosh, I'm not calling it the right thing, but the triangle between your daughter and you and her birth mother, and
Yeah.
how that connection should not be forgotten and should be
Yeah.
celebrated in a unique way. Can you maybe share a little bit about that too, and how this
Yes.
this idea of two, sorry, you like
It's
two of
okay.
you became a family, and now it's like this whole thing. So like, can you share a little bit more about how
That's
your
another
family's
way that,
extended?
yeah, that's another way I completely fell on my face. I mean, I went
Well,
into
you look great.
adoption. Oh, thank you. No, what I mean is that like I went into adoption with just this entirely wrong. It was just the way I was looking at it was entirely wrong. And I think it's important to be honest about that, because I think so many of us just have these thoughts or these perceptions. And I want to say that like it's okay in the sense that how do we know unless we experience it? Like these are natural things that we feel. And I just kind of went into it. I realize now, entitled like I am infertile. I am going to, want to adopt another woman's child. And then like this fear that she might want to have this place in this child's life. Like that was a fear of mine. Like, and so that's how I went into it. Like I just we were going to pick out a child. And that is not the way to go into it at all. Fortunately we had like 2 months to get to know her and spend time with her other 2 children. And she had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they were staying about 3 hours away from us. So I remember going to meet her for the first time, and she only speaks Spanish. We don't speak Spanish. So like the only ways we could interact is like body language and the little translation app that I had. And over time, when I got to see like this woman that the world sees as probably just like weak, right? Like not very smart, not very strong. And here she is doing like one of the hardest things that anybody could ever do is in choosing to give her child life when she doesn't have a support system. She's taking care of 2 other children. She's completely removed from her family. And she's loving so beautifully in the, like, not in the darkness in the sense that darkness is bad, but just like where nobody's seeing it. And she became this hero for me to see how much she could choose that love. And so it changed my heart. It just really, and to the pro-life movement and to the way that we talk about adoption, like really transformed that for me, where we're like, oh, just give your child up for adoption. First of all, I would never use that term give up, because it's a choice to place your child out of completely selfless love, because it is so hard. God did not create us to separate from our children. That's not how it's designed. Like there's that biological bond that the child is living within their birth mother for so long. And then like the child, that's a trauma for every child to be separated with their birth mother. So adoption, even at its best, when it's still a trauma for both the birth mother and the child. And so it's really important that we all recognize that, especially if we're talking, in the pro-life movement, I think. And so by the time, the 2 months passed and we're at the deliver, like we weren't there when she delivered Bella, but going to meet Bella for the first time, I just wanted to know how loved she was and how I wanted her to know her worth regardless of the gift that she was giving us. And so she was holding Bella when we walked in, and she just continued to hold her. It was actually this awkward, like 15 minutes where Chris and I just kind of sat at the base of the bed, like, what do we do? And eventually the nurse came up and asked her if we could hold Bella. And so she said yes. And so she handed the babe, I think either to the nurse or to me. And then I handed Bella right to Chris. I didn't even spend time with her. And she cried herself to sleep. And I again, talk about spiritual parenthood. Okay. Like the mother in me just instinctually touched her arm and comforted her while she fell asleep and cried to sleep. Like it was just it was so natural because that's my motherhood. And so, that to this day, we pray for her. There's a picture of her hanging in Bella's room. We've told Bella from as early as she could, we want her to know all of it. We will sit with her in her discomfort. The questions that we have, there was, when she was 5, there were a few months where it was just hard. She was like, I want to meet her. I want to meet my siblings. And then we're just like, yeah, like this is hard. Like, let's talk about this. Cause we want her to be as free as she can be to feel all those emotions, and that we support her in that.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sorry, no, because
I have tears in my eyes, so I'm just gathering myself a little bit.
Yeah, no, but thank you for sharing that, because that's the rawness that I don't think is heard enough. And like, there's just so much that I learned, even about like myself is hearing that. I was like, I've never heard that before. Like, thank you so much for sharing that. So I hope that like our listeners are able to appreciate how you like the uniqueness of your experience is something that like people need to hear so that they can learn. And like, this is what even for the pro-life movement, that we're all we're all pro adoption, but we don't really know what that means.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. That's such a good point. Yeah. And I didn't either. How would we, right? Unless we go through it. So that's why I talk about it.
Yeah. And we don't know what we don't know. Right. But then when we do, I think there's still a hesitancy in us as Catholics. Like, I don't like the idea that like I have a platform to speak from, because I'm like, who am I? Right. Like, I'm just sharing what has happened in our marriage purely because I didn't hear what happened in other people's marriages. And so it was like, how do I act? Like, I know no one else's home looks like ours. I'm not even suggesting that other people's should, but I do think that there's still like a filter to us sometimes. And because we're Catholic, can we be this honest? Can we be this raw? Can I say this thing? And so we're all kind of like experiencing our own things in isolation and loneliness. And I'm just so grateful for your willingness to start speaking about it. And it sounds like there's like, because you do that, there are other women that come and like reach out to you and are like, thank you for sharing this, because it relates, not exactly, but, and yeah, what would you say to our listeners to maybe inspire or suggest like how they can be more vulnerable but brave at the same time in their marriages or in their relationships, to try to address some of these very real experiences that we're talking about?
I think first of all, like, it's to be, you don't have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, but we do need to be okay and willing to go there no matter what it is. That's really it. And that's what Chris and I have experienced, which we certainly don't have time to talk about now, but like our experience with painful intercourse is a whole nother story. But like with that, like we had to have hard conversations. It had to get to that place of unity and vulnerable. It takes vulnerability. It takes a willingness to get really uncomfortable. And I just think it's the same with our individual relationship with God. Are we being honest with ourselves? Are we being honest with God? Like, I'm mad. Why you did this to me? You know, it's there. He knows it, but he wants us to bring it to him so that he can transform it. So I think it's that willingness just to feel that discomfort. Nobody wants to feel discomfort, but there's a difference between a productive discomfort, a good hard, and not productive, an unproductive hard. And like we said, IVF is an unproductive hard. But like the other route is not easy, but it's a productive hard. It's the same. We can, if we're not choosing to enter our suffering, it's going to be an unproductive. We can't get escape from it. Like suffering is going to happen. So we can choose to let God transform it. And I think that's what it is that willingness.
I love that.
Thank you.
Now, if we have listeners who, you know, are touched by your story and they want to reach out, like what's the best way they can get in contact with you? Or do you want them to contact you? Is your inbox too full right now?
No, Instagram probably at White Lotus Blooming. You can reach out to me in a direct message. Love to connect with people. And I have a website too, marygBruno.com, that has like all the things from blogs to books, coaching, and that flyer to download. I just started an email list, so I would love for you to join my email list. I promise I won't spam you, but it's just a way that I can stay connected, get a little, you know, get a little extra there. And I'll send resources and ideas and new books. I do hope to write some more books I'm working on right now. So,
all right. Can you share what books you have published? What, 2 by accident and 1 on purpose?
Yes. Yeah. So 12 Stripes Deep was my first book that I wrote. It's a bit, there it is. Okay. I don't know if anybody's going to see this video, but that's okay. And then Missing Pieces. This was the second one on accident. Female Perspectives on Sex for Catholic Women. And then my newest one is Holding Space for Joy, a prayer companion for women struggling with infertility.
Oh, man.
That's awesome.
So good. It's gold. All this stuff is gold. And we are going to do a giveaway.
Yes.
Which we probably should have prepared a little bit more on how we're going to go about doing that. But Mary is going to share one of her books. And we're going to be doing a special giveaway. So check out Instagram for that, as well as the show notes. Maybe we'll include some of the details in the show notes as well. And we'll collaborate on that.
I know. I totally forgot about it too.
Cliffhanger. And then maybe if you join the email list, you're part of it. We'll figure it out. We'll have some sort of incentive. But we are grateful that she's willing to share some of her gifts with all of you. And I think that's it. Do you have anything else that you want to share before we turn off? The other thing I was going to give away was a shirt that I created to help promote adoption,
so cool.
The Triad.
Yes. Okay.
So we'll give away one. Yes. The adoption triad. Actually, we were just in Mexico and we saw a lady with it tattooed on her back.
Oh.
And Chris spotted it. I didn't. And so I went up to her and I was like, excuse me, like, is this what I think it is? And she was like, yeah, she was this older lady, probably in her 50s or 60s. And she was adopted and she runs an adoption agency somewhere. I forget. So it was really cool. It was the triangle with the heart in it.
Okay.
So I created a shirt and it says Brave Love. And it's got this really cute picture of the triangle and the heart. And it says adoptive family, child, birth family, just to again emphasize that like we're celebrating all 3 parts of this process. Yeah. So I'll give away one of those shirts with one of the books too.
Awesome.
But you can also purchase the shirts.
Yes. Excellent. On your website, which will be in the show notes. We will link her Instagram into the show notes as well, and her website. But Mary, thank you so much for chatting with us, and everybody listening. We will see you at the next episode.